How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Last Man Standing. We got week 3 NFL action on tap tomorrow. My name is Tony Farmer. He is Ryan Hogue, Mr. Irrelevant from the 2003 NFL Draft. And we're both in Circa Survivor this year. We're surviving after week 2. 73-ish% of the field has been knocked out. We're still trucking along, and we're hoping for some luck this week. Pretty soon here, we're going to get into what the Circa Survivor selections were. I listened to the show live, so I have a rough idea of at least what the top 5 selections are. Ryan has no clue. He hasn't seen them at all, so he's going to actually see them live. So you're going to get an authentic reaction from him. We're going to pull them up on the screen, and we'll both have a little dialogue about what the Circa Survivor selections are. But first, Ryan, we should probably let people know who we are on for tomorrow. Who you rolling with?
Yeah, Tony, this was one of those weeks. It felt more like a week 10 or week 11 in the Survivor lifespan, because I didn't feel great. Like week 1, I felt great. I was going to pick the team that I thought was going to be really good this year and fading against the team. And that's why I picked the Colts to lose and the Houston to win. Week 2, it was one of those things where, again, I looked at the matchup and I decided to fade a team, Carolina, and I felt really good about the Chargers. This was one of those weeks where, while I had my eye on a number of different ones, Cincinnati for me was just I was locked in. And then their defensive backs started talking about their elementary playbook and the fact that Jane Daniels is just a dude, and that's the kind of thing obviously, these professionals, there's not a lot of bulletin board material, but when you're saying that, as a unit, you definitely raise up a little bit. So I immediately crossed that one off the list. I went with San Francisco this week. I don't feel great about it. Again, I'm fading a team, the Rams, but they have the best quarterback on the field. Even though I love Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, Matt Stafford is one of the best, if not a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL. But I see his, everything's decimated around him. If it was just his receivers, I would maybe stay away from this game, but his offensive line is decimated, and I just think that's going to be too big of hurdle, even though San Fran has its share of injuries as well. How about you?
Yeah, and if you missed Tuesday's show, we had Ryan's former teammate Marcus Robinson on the show, and his nephew DeMarcus Robinson plays for the Rams, and we asked him for a Survivor pick if he was playing in Survivor, and he said the Rams. So Ryan is flying in the face of his buddy's advice. I am too. I've got one entry on the 49ers as well. We'll get to the entry counts in a second, and you'll see how many other people are with us on the 49ers this week. So I've got one on the 49ers. I don't think our audience knows this yet, but I got one through on the Jets on Thursday, so I'm happy about that. And then my remaining entries, I've got 1 on the Browns and 3 on the Bengals Monday night. And like you, Ryan, this week was kind of challenging for me. I went into the week thinking this is going to be an easy week, right? We got a lot of 6+ point favorites. I like the Bengals. I like the Niners. I like the Browns. And then all this injury news started coming out all week, And then even the weather Monday night with Cincinnati, I'm like, oh man, if it starts to rain and Cincinnati's missing 2 big interior defensive linemen, maybe Washington can run the ball. And then the Kittle injury comes out. Charvarius Ward misses practice for the 49ers. And, Myles Garrett has 2 feet that are injured now. And Conklin's still out for the Browns. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I thought I had a lot of options. And the options kind of started to dwindle a little bit. And
yeah.
It started to feel a little dicey toward the end there. So, again, that's what I'm rolling with. I've got 3 Bengals, 1 49ers, 1 Jets across, and 1 Browns. I don't feel great about it. This isn't the most confident week that I'm going into, but we'll see how it goes. I think I'm going to be okay through the weekend.
And it's one of those things where these names that are coming up on injury reports, or whether it's questionable or out, they're big names, potentially deal breaker type of names, like Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year type names. Kittle, game breaker. That's where it gets really dicey. I will say this is the 2nd week in a row I've gone against my guest, Brian McKinney. Obviously said that he was on the Ravens, and I went opposite. I didn't pick the opposite in terms of Survivor, but I said The Raiders were absolutely live, and this one we'll see. Maybe I just need to keep fading my guests that I have on, and we have another special secret guest coming next Tuesday. So get your popcorn ready.
Well, I'm excited. That's going to be 2 tough acts to follow with 2 very recognizable names in the NFL in our last 2 shows. I'm excited. And for people who don't know, that last guest was a surprise to me as well. I didn't know until I saw him pop up in the waiting room here backstage. So I'm excited to see who Ryan has lined up for us next week as well. Before we bring up the selection counts and kind of react to that, I just want to echo what you were saying, Ryan, about these injuries. Not only is it big names, but we see some cluster injuries too. Like the Bucs have 2 big injuries to defensive linemen. The 49ers, to their weapons, 1 running back and a receiver and a tight end. And so, yeah, man, it's getting pretty dicey here. We saw the Patriots with those cluster injuries on their offensive line going into that Thursday night game. So it's getting pretty interesting. It's a little early in the season to be seeing all this medical drama going on.
And Tony, another reason, no reason to map it out, starting in May, because things happen, and, where you might have felt good about one team, Tua goes out and things like that, man. You need a couple weeks to let things shake out. And then even when you have the perfect path scheduled so you can get that 14 million, stuff like this happens. So
hey, talk to me in 8 weeks when you don't have the Texans left and tell me if you still think mapping it out is a bad idea. We'll have to revisit that in a couple weeks. Okay. Before we pull up the selection counts here real quick, I want to give a shout out to Survivor Atlas. If you are in a Survivor pool, whether it's Circa Survivor or not, and you're not following Survivor Atlas, you're doing it wrong. They've got a great grid on their website. They've got a community of people that love talking Survivor. So follow them on X/Twitter at Survivor Atlas. And also their Thursday night tailgates are fun. They do like a live X Spaces on Twitter, which is a lot of fun as well. And then also a shout out to Survivor Sweat, Ryan. I don't know if you saw, but they sold 10 entries in the marketplace this week alone. So the marketplace is hopping. Head over to survivorsweat.com. If you have a Survivor entry right now and you're thinking of selling one, or if you want to get in the game and you want to participate in this quest for $14 million, you can still get in and buy a percentage, 99%, 1%, 50% of someone else's entry. But without further ado, Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the selection count. You're seeing this for the first time, so we can react to this live. We've got the Bengals as the top selection, more than a quarter of the pool. Monday night, 25.5%. People not being scared away by that big loss on Monday night last week. Maybe we have some more carnage on Monday night this week. Ryan and I's selection of the 49ers has 69 people on it. That's 1.8%. You and I were talking, Ryan. I think, the 2 to 4% range is kind of what we're expecting. So I like how low that number is. But me with 3 on the Bengals, I don't like seeing that number that high. That is a little surprising to me. And then I've got 1 in the Browns, so I don't like seeing them too. I was hoping, maybe Browns Bengals could even be like the 3rd and 4th highest selection, and maybe there'd be more on the Raiders. But it's quite obvious, whether you agree or not, the Bryce Young demotion in favor of Andy Dalton has scared people off the Raiders. Ryan, I want to ask you about that because you work closely with the Raiders radio show right now, and you know that team inside and out. Why didn't you pick the Raiders this week?
Yeah, I certainly considered it, but when I did a deep dive into Carolina, I saw that teams are playing them a certain way with Bryce Young. And they were either pressuring him and knowing that when they pressure him, he's going to make a bad decision, or when they didn't pressure him and they just played a shell defense or like 2 deep safeties, he was going to hit the check down almost every time, even though he has one of the cleanest pockets in the NFL. That's really predictable for a defense. Plus, he really never took any shots. You got a guy coming in with Andy Dalton, right? Same spot last year, right? Week 3, he came in, threw the ball 58 times, which was the most of any quarterback last year in any game, 58 times.
That was against the Seahawks, I believe, right?
Against the Seahawks, they put up
in Seattle on the road.
Yeah, and they put up like 27 points. I mean, they did lose, but and then I look at 2022 when he subbed in for Jameis Winston for I think 14 games, and he had 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Like those are serviceable numbers, right? Bryce Young, what he was doing was not serviceable. And so just the fear of the unknown. And then Andy Dalton, like the life of a backup quarterback, they say is the best position in the NFL because everybody's clamoring for you, right? Except you're getting paid the same and you get to hold the clipboard. Then once you go in, worst case scenario, you have a bad game and they just go back to the starter and you're back to holding a clipboard. Like Andy has nothing to lose. He is going to absolutely take shots down the field, right? And I would say the Raiders, that's one thing they really haven't seen this year is teams taking shots down the field because they get after the quarterback so well. They kind of leave their corners on an island. So they do have a good secondary, but those corners are going to be tested this week because I think the Red Rocket's going to just chuck and duck and see what happens. So, you know, I would hope that the Raiders first home game, things like that. But if Carolina goes and scores first and can kind of negate that home field advantage, then you got, you know, people start groaning, man, this is a 2-win team from last year. They're supposed to be worse. Like you got the Raiders not having that Raider Nation black hole type of home field advantage, and you get in trouble. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, my thinking was similar with avoiding the Raiders. A lot of people don't realize the Panthers' offensive line is actually having a really good season. I think Bryce Young's been sacked 6 times, so you might think that they're, you know, not having the best year. But you look at a lot of their grading, like Pro Football Focus and a lot of the advanced analytics. Panthers' offensive line is doing well. They've got better weapons in Carolina than a lot of other teams in the league. And I like your point, Ryan, about this kind of being the end of Andy Dalton's career. Might we see like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type situation where he just balls out and has a couple 300-yard games at the end of his career? Even Joe Flacco last year. Like, these guys have absolutely nothing to lose. Their legacy is already cemented. It is what it is. They're playing with house money at this point. You might see Andy Dalton take a couple more chances, especially on a winless team that has no like expectations. Why not throw a 50-50 jump ball up with the score tied in the fourth quarter, you know? So it's going to be, I think, at least a more entertaining Panthers game. Now, that said, tell me if you disagree, Ryan. I wouldn't be shocked if the Raiders won by 2 touchdowns as well. Just from a survivor perspective, there is a very realistic idea of an upset. There's a path for that to happen, which is ultimately
there's definitely a path for an upset. And all their, you know, their defense is serviceable, and all that defense needs is to see one like downfield completion, and they're going to be like, yep, see, this is all we need. And they're going to get pumped up and jazzed. And like, so absolutely, that's upset alert for me. But yes, I wouldn't be surprised. I think the Raiders are the better team. I actually think they outplayed the Chargers week 1, and they just lost the turnover battle 3-1 and the sack battle 4-1. So, you know, those kind of things negate all talent discrepancies and things like that. So we'll find out. I was disappointed to see that the Jets, 445 people, 12% of the pool roughly, are already through. So congratulations to those people. But for somebody that's trying to win the millions like I am, that's a bummer for me to see that 12% of the people already are through. But I will say that it's, you know, it is exciting to see that there's 3,000 people just in 4 games, that all it takes is, you know, 4 upsets. And I don't expect all 4, but, you know, I could easily see the Browns, you know, going into the fourth quarter in a deep, ugly, you know, hotly contested game. And who knows what happens there. Again, I talked about the Bengals and my disdain for their, you know, they're a winless team. They already talked trash last week, and look what that got them, a loss, right? Whether or not they feel they should have won, that's beside the point. Why you're winless? Why are you stoking the fire and calling out Kingsbury and Jane Daniels? I just don't get it. The Bucks, you mentioned they have a couple of big injuries, and I feel like the Bucks have been kind of riding high and playing really, really well. So I wouldn't be surprised with a letdown. And I mean, you can score on the Bucks, but they're going to be able to score as well. So we'll see.
Ryan, before we sign off here, we should talk a little bit about why we ended up landing on the 49ers and what, although there are some concerns, what ultimately attracted us to that game. So I'll go ahead and kick that off. Injuries on both sides. I like that there's injuries to the Rams offensive line. And not only are there injuries, the backups that they have at the second level are very inexperienced. So we've got a 6th-round rookie, I believe, at center or guard. And then the other position on the interior is a guy who's only played like 3 snaps in the NFL. So a lot of inexperience on that offensive line against a veteran defensive line and against a veteran defensive line coach, Chris Kusarek, who I think is probably the best defensive line coach in the NFL. So I'm excited about that mismatch there. Of course, I don't like that the 49ers are missing a lot of their weapons, but they are deep, right? Like they've got Jawan Jennings. Jordan Mason has looked above average. And remember how the Rams looked against the Lions in overtime. Remember when the Lions just kept running the ball down their throat? Jordan Mason is that kind of runner. He's the I'm going to run you over power style runner. And I could see the 49ers having a lot of success in the run game against the Rams. But ultimately, and you and I talked about this before we made our selection, I think it was you that I talked to, we also knew there wasn't going to be a lot of people on the 49ers. And so when you're like, should I go Raiders? Should I go 49ers? You're thinking about who's most likely to win. You're thinking about who you're most likely going to want to use later in the season, but also who are more people going to be on this week. And that was kind of a deciding factor for me. I was expecting about 3 to 4% on the Niners, went with them. Now there's less than 2%. I love it even more. So that was kind of some of my rationale for San Francisco. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, strength in numbers is not ideal when it comes to Survivor and Last Man Standing. So I'm with you on that. I think Jordan Mason's the second leading rusher in the NFL in terms of yards. I could be wrong on that, but to your point, yeah, the way this game's shaping up to be is going to be who can win up front, right? And when you have limited pieces, you have to be able to win up front. And I like the 49ers because their offensive line, although their center has been playing horribly, their 5 offensive linemen are intact, and the running game has looked really, really good. When you have that, you can play action pass off of it. Brandon Ayuk is bound to show that he's worth, maybe not 20 million, but maybe a few million in the passing game. And then I think, an underrated thing is they're getting an all-pro safety back, right? Your boy, yeah, you're a Niners fan. So like, that's a big deal. That's going to bring some excitement for the team. That's going to bring, a little juice in the back end. And, when you have Fred Warner playing in front of you and Bosa playing in front of him, like now you're at all 3 levels. You have studs. I find it hard to believe that the Rams are going to be able to put up, more than 13 points. And if that's the case, like I like the 49ers to get at least 1 more point than that.
Yeah, Talanoa Hufanga is that all-pro safety that you mentioned. And if you look at that Vikings game, when they gave up those deep passes, I don't think that happens with Hufanga in the game. Like, don't get me wrong, Justin Jefferson is going to get his, right? But I saw an interview with the 49ers defensive coordinator, and he was basically trying to justify having Odom, who's the 49ers backup safety. This is like a career special teams guy. Essentially, I don't want to say one-on-one, but essentially his main assignment was Justin Jefferson on some of those deep routes. And that's a mismatch. Yeah. So I think any concerns you have about the 49ers defense because of how they looked against the Vikings, you need to realize that Hufanga's back. D. Winters, who isn't a starter, but he's a rotational linebacker. He'll probably get like 10 or 15 snaps in this game. He returns as well. And so the 49ers, yeah, they have some injuries, but they're also getting a couple key pieces back on the defense. And hey, at the end of the day, Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay. Unless it's the end of the season when the 49ers aren't playing for anything, so they're resting their starters, or that one playoff game, the NFC Championship game, which the Niners really should have won if their safety didn't have a ball bounce off their chest, Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay. So I'm leaning a little bit on that coaching. I don't want to call it a coaching mismatch because Sean McVay is a damn good coach, but Kyle Shanahan has his number, so I'm going to lean on that coaching mismatch.
Right on.
All right. Any other thoughts here? I'm going to go ahead and pull it up one last time here, Ryan, before we sign off. See if you have any other thoughts. I'll try to think of some thoughts here as well.
Yeah, and if any of our listeners have any thoughts or
share those. Man, I always forget about the comments, bro. I'm so bad at this DJing I'm doing over here. Let's see what we got. I got the Titans. I don't believe in Malik. What do you think about the Titans, love, Ryan? 54 people on the Titans against the Packers. First thing to talk about here is the fact that there is an outside chance. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a chance that Jordan Love plays in this game. I think it's gamesmanship by LaFleur. I don't think we're going to see Love, but just the 5% chance that you wake up and learn that Jordan Love is starting tomorrow morning, that would have me off the Titans already with $1,000 Survivor entry.
Yeah, and the Titans, people don't realize they have the number 1 defense in the NFL. and it's pretty significant lead over the number 2. Their defense is nasty. Obviously, they embarrassed the Bears offense, and they played the Jets really, really tough. They kept it close, and I mean, if it weren't for kind of inept quarterback play, like they'd be 2-0 right now. So it's ballsy to go on an 0-2 team, kind of like Cincinnati. A lot of people putting a survivor pick on an 0-2 team, that's never a recipe for continued success, I don't think. But again, I feel like that might be one of those multiple entries. You don't have a lot of spots to use the Titans down the road. This could be one of those spots. And you're fading Malik Willis because if anybody saw him last week, right? I mean, they had a very vanilla game plan. He was 12 of 14, right? For 96 yards or something like that. He was going to check the ball down. And so I don't mind fading that. I'm not going to do it with my one entry, but I kind of like going out on a limb there. And there's not a lot of people that pick it.
Adam Orphan and Based, two of our listeners are both on the Titans here. And I tell you what, they've got to be happy with how this looks. This is why you picked the Titans, because there's only 1.4% of the field on them. So you hope to get the Titans across the finish line, and then you root for carnage. And so in pools like this, Ryan, it's a lot different than a 88-person office pool. You have to take chances like this at some point. And why not take those chances a little bit earlier when your entries aren't worth 40 grand? Why not take those chances earlier? And so I don't hate it. I just couldn't do it with the whole Jordan Love potential the next day. And you got two really good cornerbacks on the Titans. Really good. Maybe the best cornerback duo in the NFL. Definitely top 5 in that category. And they know Malik Willis. And I think it could be a tough day passing for Malik if Jordan Love isn't in there. So I see it. We got someone else that used the Jets. So we are across the finish line. I'm with you, Zocold. Ryan, you got a little jealousy that you're not across the line with the Jets already?
No, because I have a rule about Thursday night games, man. Just weird things happen in Thursday night games. I mean, the Jets were dominating, and at halftime, it was like still a game. And I was like, see, this is one of those games that could turn out. Like, you just never know. And Thursday night, it's just such a short week, and I don't know. You look at Tua the week before. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't like him.
Man, we got another one. I took the Titans. That's 3 of our listeners all taking the Titans. I assume this is in Circa Survivor, but maybe it's in other Survivor pools that they're doing. So there's 50-something on the Titans, and 3 of them are here in this chat. That's awesome to see. Awesome to hear from you guys. Awesome to hear from Jason. Let's go, boys. Jason's pumped up for week 3. And then we got someone here who thinks the Niners are their play, but they're saving them and went Bengals Bucks. Hey, I get that. There are some great spots to use the 49ers, including next week against the Patriots, by the way. There's some great spots for the Niners later this season, and that's why I only took them on one entry. So, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it's never a good thing to use a team if they're not fully healthy, especially when they have such a high ceiling. So the fact that we're taking the Niners when they're at 75% capacity is a problem. But again, this was one of those weeks where it's just like, how there aren't any slam dunks, in my opinion. So nice job, David. He had the Jets. I think if you go back to the sheet, Tony, it only looked like there was 1 or 2 games that were for sure going to lose people, right? Chargers, Steelers, there's people on both. But again, 1 and 14. And then
Colts, Bears, there's only 1 Bears.
Titans, Packers, 54-3. Yeah. But yeah, we're not going to lose. I mean, there's a chance if it goes chalk that, we're looking at 3,700 live entries next week.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And let me tell you, that Monday night game is going to be interesting. Well, so you got 2 Monday night games. The Bills 71 is going to be on the line, while the Bengals. So there's over 1,000 entries on the line. Ryan, do you hate the staggered Monday night football games as much as me? I like the idea of having 2 Monday night games, but have them one after another. Come on, I don't like it.
It makes zero sense. I've lamented this for years. It's kind of like the NCAA tournament. I don't know why, especially when it comes to like the Sweet 16, they do 1 game standalone and they have 4 games at the same time. It's like, no, draw it out the entire day. Like, people want to watch. I don't understand. You nailed it.
We got a little cheers, 2 beer mugs there from Adam. I'm excited to see people And in the sport, he clarified he is one of the Circa Survivor people who are on the Titans. So it's an honor to have you here. Thanks for listening. And then Zocold's talking little Raiders here. I'm a Raiders fan. That's your old team, Ryan, the team that drafted you. They have choked in spots like this. What do you think about that comment?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying same old Raiders. I'll be at the stadium tomorrow doing the pregame show in the concourse, Zocold. So if you're at the game, come say hi. But yeah, I mean, honestly, ever since I was drafted, they haven't been back to the playoffs, right? In 2002, they went to the Super Bowl. I got drafted in 2003. They haven't been back to the playoffs since. And it is one of those where it's like, oh, this is maybe a promising year, and then they go and lose to an awful team. So,
yeah, and Zocode says, loving our defense, though. Ryan, there's another thing that kind of scared me about Raiders-Panthers was you and I agree the Panthers' offensive line has actually played well above average this year. And the Raiders' strength is their defensive line. So I think the Panthers are just good enough. I think the Raiders will get a couple sacks tomorrow. Don't get me wrong. They're not going to be dominated by the Panthers. But I think that offensive line is just good enough to kind of neutralize the Raiders' strength. And there is a little bit more vulnerability on the back half of that defense as opposed to on the defensive line. So I think it's just from a strength weakness perspective, I think that helps the Panthers out a little bit, the fact that they've got a solid offensive line in this game.
Yeah, and on the flip side, they're the number 32, Carolina is, in terms of generating pressure. And obviously the Raiders' offensive line is their weakness. But if you give Minshew some time, we've seen that he can make some plays. So it's going to be, it's who breaks first kind of in one of those things. So it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and the Panthers will be without two defensive linemen. Shai Tuttle is the most recent one to be down, adding from Derek Brown's injury. That's the big one. They're really going to miss those guys. The Raiders running game really hasn't gotten going yet this year. I think they're missing Josh Jacobs. It's going to be interesting to see if they can take advantage of those two injuries from the Panthers. What do we got here? Panthers money line for all those coins. The Raiders will win games they're not supposed to and lose games. That's kind of what you were saying there, Ryan. And you know what? I'm going to say not the same thing about the Niners because they've won a lot recently, but the Niners will lose a scratch your head game a couple times a year. They'll do that. I don't think they're going to do it in this spot to go 1-2, but like that Vikings game last week didn't surprise me at all. That's a game that Kyle Shanahan loses against the defensive coordinator. That's not surprising at all. Someone says, watch out for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I've watched Scott. I've been a Dolphins fan because I just love how they operate their offense. And the way they operate their offense, though, is through timing and the fact that they have everything so nicely timed up with Tua. And he's a left-handed quarterback. So a lot of their protection, all their things are kind of to the left of the field because it's a lot easier for a left-handed quarterback to throw that way. And so I've watched Skylar Thompson, right? I think he does some nice things, especially with his legs, and he has a little wiggle. But man, Seattle offensively puts you in a bind, and I know they're without Kenneth Walker again, but I don't know. It's one of those games I would just stay away from. And but I'm excited to see. Tony, here's my question to you. If you could say right now, you and the 400 people go through and you're one entry left with 400 and the rest of us lose, or all six go through and we still have 3,400 people, what would you choose right now? Would you be one of 400 or 6 of 3,800?
That's a tough one. I like having the bullets. I like having the 6 entries. It's a comfort, like you feel less naked and you feel like you have a little bit more margin for error. And it also gives you the opportunity, like the dream, Ryan, you know this already, but the dream is to be past Thanksgiving, like week 15, week 16, and have multiple entries, because then you can do a split at some point. And when there's 1 out of 400 left, there's no splitting. And so, that would probably be my answer there. A lot of people might disagree with me though, because when you're down to 400 before Thanksgiving, I mean, if that were the case, this thing might be over. It might be a week or two away from this thing being over. So, but in situations like that, it's a tough question to answer. But I think I lean a little bit more toward having the entries. When this person said, "Watch out for the Dolphins," are they talking about this week, or are they talking about just in general? People are going to be sleeping on them. Let me say this about Skylar Thompson: he didn't look that good when he played in the past, but correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, wasn't Teron Armstead out? Didn't they have several other injuries besides Tua? And so, not to mention, quarterbacks always benefit from sitting on the sideline after you get a little playing time. So I think we could see an improved effort here from Skylar Thompson, and it could surprise some people moving forward. We'll see. Hey, you were worried at all about Jimmy Garoppolo knowing the 49ers
No.
in and out, knowing Kyle Shanahan in and out from being on the team 2 years ago? He's now the backup quarterback with the Rams. Does that concern you at all?
No, I mean, it really doesn't. He'll run the scout team, and he'll do a nice job of running the scout team this week and this and that. But it's people, make mountains out of molehills. That is not a big deal at all. And all their checks are changed, and they recognize, like, hey, this, if he was in the room and they normally do this for no huddle, they're gonna just switch it to this instead. It's gonna be super simple.
So it sounds like, Ryan, the fact that was 2 years ago instead of Garoppolo being on the team last year, that would maybe make a little bit of a difference for you.
Yes, it would make a little bit of a difference, but still not enough.
Yeah, good point. Seahawks coming off an overtime win. But hey, the Dolphins are coming off some extra rest. They got smoked in that game, but they've had some time to lick their wounds and game plan for this game. Gotta love the team on extra rest as well. I think that's going to be one of the more entertaining games to watch.
To your point, Tony, think about the Thursday night game. I forgot that it was a team playing against a team coming off an overtime game, right? So if you're an overtime game followed by a Thursday night game like New England, like somebody made that point. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like that was an exhausting game. And now you have to play with only a couple days. Plus you're such a physical team. Like that's a big deal. And I forgot to fade that. That's on me.
Yeah, I think there was like 11 or 12 snaps in overtime. So they played a couple extra snaps. I always wondered too, this early in the season, Ryan, tell me if you disagree with this from a player's perspective. Those offensive plays that you're calling in overtime are probably some of your best plays, right? So you're now putting that on tape, some of your best plays, some of your favorite looks for that team to see the next week. You're giving them more things to study and more things to be aware of. You'll have perhaps a few less tricks in your bag that you can catch teams off guard with the following week. You buy that at all?
No.
Just nothing to that. All right, fair enough. So it's more the tired part for you.
Yeah, nobody is just like, hey, if we go to overtime, these are the play. I mean, if it's a 2-point play and you want to win, you're gonna bring out your best play. If it's a 4th down and you must have it, you're gonna do it. But overtime, you don't have you're just going off down and distance. You're going off your same play call sheet. Hey, we had success in this in the first quarter on 2nd and 7. Let's come back to this play again.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just thinking an offensive coordinator that's in the NFL for the first time. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of NFL snaps, period, for him. So if you're throwing an extra 6 or 7 offensive snaps out there, it can't hurt, but respect your opinion there. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Ryan, anything else you want to add? We had a great audience here, a lot of comments, a lot of viewers watching us live. This is awesome to see. Anything else you want to say to send us off here?
No. Thanks, Circa, for having such an awesome contest that we can talk about each week. And I hope we keep going through so we can keep talking about it.
And we'll be back Tuesday live. Ryan has a special guest. Our last 2 special guests have been incredible former NFL players. We'll see who he's got lined up for us Tuesday live. When do we go live, Ryan? 7 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, right?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Have fun, guys. Enjoy the game out there. Best of luck to everybody in Survivor. Take care.
Go Niners. Go Raiders.